I spent 7 years building the very product that turned Velocity Dynamics from a struggling startup into a $500 million tech leader. 7 years of 18-hour days, missed holidays, and countless sleepless nights. I was the chief systems engineer, the person who knew every line of code, every integration point, every single vulnerability, because I built it. The product? PulseLink, a real-time logistics management system that powered major corporations worldwide. It was the backbone of our company. Without it, Velocity Dynamics would crumble. And yet, standing there in the middle of the conference room in front of the entire executive team, department heads, and even junior employees, CEO Graham Foster smirked like he had just won the lottery. "Congratulations, Kathy. You're terminated," he said, sliding a severance envelope across the polished glass table like it was some kind of prize. I stared at the envelope for a second, then at Graham, that arrogant little grin pulling at the corner of his mouth. Around the table, people shifted uncomfortably, some avoided eye contact, others watched eagerly like they were front row to a gladiator fight. Effective immediately, he added with that oily corporate tone, "We're restructuring. You know how it is." Yeah, I knew exactly how it was. I also knew something Graham didn't. I calmly stood up, unclipped my badge, and placed it gently on the table. Then I leaned forward, just enough for my voice to carry, but not enough to seem dramatic. "Then I paused, letting the silence hang, "you explain to the investors why PulseLink goes offline in exactly 9 minutes. The room froze. Graham blinked. "Excuse me?" I smiled, the kind of smile that never quite touches the eyes. "Check the monitoring dashboard. I'm sure you'll find the countdown running." A nervous shuffle rippled through the room. Someone opened their laptop. Someone else bolted for the door. The HR director's eyes went wide as saucers. And then the panic started. Graham's fake confidence evaporated like mist in sunlight. He stood up so fast his chair skidded backward. "What did you do?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Instead, I straightened my blazer, picked up my small cardboard box, the one they so graciously provided for my personal belongings, and walked calmly toward the door. As I reached the doorway, I glanced back just long enough to see the CTO frantically typing, 2 engineers sprinting toward the server room, and Graham jabbing his phone, probably calling someone, anyone who could fix this. 8 minutes now, I said softly, then stepped into the hallway. Let me back up for a second. This didn't happen overnight. When I joined Velocity Dynamics, it was a scrappy startup operating out of a shared co-working space. There was no product, just an idea on a whiteboard and a desperate CEO pitching investors on promises he couldn't deliver. I was the one who designed PulseLink from scratch. I built the architecture, wrote the critical systems, debugged the endless problems that would have sunk any lesser team. For years, Graham praised me publicly. "Kathy's the backbone of this company," he'd say. "Couldn't do it without her." Investors loved hearing that. Employees respected it, until they didn't. About 6 months ago, something shifted. Graham started getting cagey in meetings. My access to financial projections quietly disappeared. Conversations stopped whenever I entered a room. I wasn't naive, I'd seen this before. The classic, "we don't need her anymore," play. They'd raise a new funding round, hire some hotshot junior engineers on half my salary, then push me out under the guise of restructuring. And last week, I saw the paperwork on the printer. A draft contract offering my job, to some kid named Connor. 2 years out of college. No real-world experience. But hey, he worked for cheaper. That's when I realized Graham wasn't just replacing me, he was erasing me. My name was being scrubbed from the patents, the press releases, and the internal documentation. But what Graham didn't know was that I had seen it coming. And I had prepared. See, PulseLink wasn't just a logistics platform, it was a living, breathing network of interconnected systems. One that I had architected to be both resilient and highly sensitive to unauthorized control. 6 months ago, when I saw the signs, I embedded something. A fail-safe. Not malicious, let's be clear, just a protective protocol. If certain credentials were revoked, mine, specifically, the system would assume it was under hostile takeover. And then, automatic lockdown. Not deletion. Not damage. Just offline. Everything, servers, APIs, front ends, back-end processes, the entire infrastructure, dead. As I walked toward the elevator, I could hear voices shouting behind me. Call IT now. What the hell does she mean, offline? Is the database backed up? I hit the elevator button and waited. Calm. Controlled. Hands steady. Heart steady. Because Graham had made one catastrophic mistake, he assumed I was just a cog in the machine. What he didn't realize was that I built the machine. And in exactly 7 minutes, he was going to learn just how fragile his empire really was without me. By the time I reached the parking garage, my phone had already buzzed with 7 missed calls, all from unknown numbers. I opened my car door, slid in, and just sat there for a moment, watching the clock on my dashboard, midnight. And right on cue, PulseLink went dark. Not just the internal systems. Not just the test servers. No, the entire production network collapsed. Global clients, offline. Shipment trackers, gone. Warehouse integrations, dead. Velocity Dynamics, the darling of the supply chain industry, just became an expensive brick. I could almost picture it, Graham, staring at his screen as error messages multiplied like wildfire. Frantic engineers scrambling to reboot servers only to realize nothing was coming back online. My phone vibrated again. This time a number I recognized, Rachel, the company's operations director, one of the few decent people there. Someone who, deep down, probably knew this was coming. I let it ring. Then sent it straight to voicemail. Not yet. Let them sweat. I drove home, no rush, picked up coffee on the way. Even chatted casually with the barista, who had no idea the chaos unfolding a few miles away was my doing. Or rather, the consequence of their own greed. By the time I stepped through my front door, my inbox was flooded. 12 missed calls from Graham. 6 from Rachel. 2 from the CTO, Mark. A desperate text from an unknown number, please call. Please. The system is down. We need to talk. I set my phone down, ordered Thai food, opened Netflix. Played an old sitcom I'd seen 100 times, the kind where nothing serious ever happens. Because unlike Graham, I wasn't panicking. An hour later, a knock. Loud. Insistent. I checked the peephole. Not security. Not lawyers. Not yet. Rachel. And behind her, slightly out of breath, Mark, the CTO. I opened the door slowly. Deliberately. Just wide enough to raise an eyebrow. Oh. Fancy seeing you two here. Rachel's face was tense. Kathy, we need to talk. Now. Seems sudden. Last I checked, I didn't work for you anymore. Mark rubbed the back of his neck. Look. There's been a misunderstanding. I laughed. Couldn't help it. A misunderstanding? Which part? The firing, the severance envelope, or the part where you tried to erase my name from my own creation? Rachel sighed, glancing at Mark. Can we come in? Please? I considered it. Then stepped aside. Shoes off. They shuffled in, awkwardly, like kids called into the principal's office. I sat, crossed one leg over the other, and waited. Mark started. Look. The system, Pulse Link, it's, offline, I finished for him. Catastrophic failure. Full stack lockdown. Clients are screaming. Investors are probably circling like vultures. Am I getting warm? He swallowed. Dead on. Rachel jumped in. Look, Kathy. We get it. We handled this wrong. Graham, he was impulsive. But this can be fixed. You can fix it. I leaned back. Can I? You have to, Mark blurted. This could destroy the company. Millions in contracts. Lawsuits. He stopped, realizing how desperate he sounded. I let the silence hang long enough to make them uncomfortable. Then finally, I spoke. Let me guess. Graham didn't send you because he's too busy screaming into a phone somewhere. Or maybe hiding under his desk. Rachel exchanged a glance with Mark but said nothing, which was confirmation enough. I stood, walked to my desk, opened my laptop, typed a few keys. The dashboard loaded. And there it was, a sea of red alerts. Critical failure. Authentication chain broken. Core operations halted. Node integrity compromised. Mark leaned forward, eyes wide. Wait, you still have access? I smiled. Of course I do. I built the back door 6 years ago. Didn't think I'd ever need it. Guess I was wrong. I turned the laptop toward them. See this? I pointed. The system isn't broken. It's protecting itself. When my credentials were revoked, it assumed hostile takeover. Standard security protocol. If you were paying attention during development meetings, Mark. His face flushed. Rachel buried her face in her hands. So you can bring it back online, right? Rachel asked quietly. I closed the laptop. That depends on what? I stood, walked back to the living room window looking out at the city skyline, my company, or at least the one that should have been mine. It depends, I said, turning back to face them, on how much you're willing to pay to buy back what you tried to steal. Rachel blinked. You're serious? I crossed my arms. Dead serious. You wanted Pulse Link without me. Fine. You found out what that feels like. Now if you want it back, we negotiate on my terms. Mark scoffed. This is extortion. I tilted my head. No, Mark. This is business. You taught me that. Silence. Heavy, uncomfortable, full of realization. Rachel finally spoke. What exactly do you want? I smiled slowly, letting the tension build. Oh, we'll get to that. But first I think Graham should be here for this conversation, don't you? Mark opened his mouth like he wanted to argue, then shut it, because he knew, they both knew, the girl they thought they could discard just became the one holding all the cards. 15 minutes later, the sound of screeching tires echoed from the street. I didn't even need to check, I knew exactly who had just arrived. Sure enough, moments later a rapid, frantic knock rattled my door. 3 sharp bangs. The kind of knock that screams, open this door before I kick it down. I let it sit for a beat. Then 2. Then 3. Then slowly walked over and opened it just enough to see Graham Foster, disheveled, flushed, tie loosened, shirt untucked, sweat staining under his collar. The arrogant CEO who had smirked while firing me hours ago now looked like a man standing on the edge of a cliff staring at the abyss. You think this is funny? He barked, pushing his way inside without waiting for an invitation. I didn't move. Just let him stomp in like a toddler mid-tantrum. Rachel and Mark stood off to the side, awkward, silent. They knew better than to interrupt. Graham spun toward me, his eyes wild. Turn it back on. Now. I raised an eyebrow. You seem upset, Graham. Stressful day? He jabbed a finger in my face. You're playing with fire, Kathy. This is sabotage. Criminal. You'll never. Careful, I interrupted, voice calm, measured. You're one bad sentence away from making this personal. He froze. Jaw tight. Breathing heavy. But behind all that bluster I saw it, fear. Real fear. Because he knew. He knew exactly how bad this was. I walked over to my desk, opened my laptop, turned it toward him, showing the disaster he was drowning in. 92% of client operations offline. 137 service-level agreements breached. 24 pending lawsuits incoming. Investor group chat, is velocity collapsing? I gestured casually. Look familiar? Graham's fists clenched. You're bluffing. Rachel shook her head. She's not. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I checked the clients. They're all calling. Our email servers are flooded. Mark added quietly, we had to shut down the client portal. It kept throwing corrupted data. They think we've been hacked. Oh, you've been hacked all right, I said, folding my arms. By your own arrogance. Graham's face shifted, fury flickering into something smaller. Desperate. Fine, he hissed. Name your price. I let the silence drag. Watching him squirm. Let it marinate. Then I walked to my bookshelf, pulled out a folder, not a laptop, not a drive. A folder. Paper. Analog. Untouchable. Here's how this goes, I said, laying it flat on the table. I give you the protocol to restore Pulse Link. Clean. No bugs. No back doors. Full operational integrity. His eyes narrowed. And I smiled. And I take what was always mine. 50% ownership of all Pulse Link patents, retroactive and future. Full reinstatement as CTO, effective immediately. A board seat. Permanent. A personal buyout of $15 million for attempted removal and breach of intellectual trust. And one more thing, I leaned forward. A public statement. Signed by you, the board, and the investors. Acknowledging me as Pulse Link's sole inventor and architect. No exceptions. No watered-down PR spin. Graham's mouth fell open. You're insane. That's theft. I laughed. No, Graham. Theft is what you tried. What I'm doing. This is restitution. Silence. Mark looked like he wanted to disappear. Rachel didn't even try to argue. Her gaze stayed locked on the table. You don't have a choice, I continued. If Pulse Link stays down another hour, Velocity Dynamics is finished. Your stock tanks. Investors pull out. Clients sue. Your entire empire, I snap my fingers, gone. Graham paced, running both hands through his thinning hair. 15 million? You're out of your mind. 15 million, I repeated, is the discount rate. Because without Pulse Link, this company isn't worth $15. He glared. And if I refuse? I didn't flinch. Then Pulse Link stays offline, and you can explain to the New York Times, TechCrunch, and the SEC why your flagship product crashed after you fired its only architect. Oh, and let's not forget the investors. Class action lawsuits. Should I forward you their lawyers' contact info now or later? His mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. Nothing came out. Rachel finally spoke. quiet but firm. She's right. Graham whipped his head toward her. Excuse me? She stood. Straightened her blazer. You think the investors are going to side with you over the person who saved the company 10 times over? You think they won't know this was your doing? She glanced at me. Or worse, ours. Mark nodded, pale. The logs show you revoked Kathy's credentials. The paper trail's clear. I crossed my arms. Clock's ticking. He stared at me. Pure loathing. Pure defeat. But also, acceptance. Because he knew he was cornered. Fine, he growled. Draft the damn agreement. I smiled. Already did. I pulled a fresh set of documents from the folder and slid them across the table. Signed by me. Waiting only for his signature. Graham's hands trembled as he picked up the pen. For a second I thought he might throw it across the room. But he didn't. He signed. One line. Then the next. And the next. When he finished, he shoved the papers back at me. It's done. I leaned forward. Voice low. Calm. Lethal. No, Graham. Now I'm done. The next morning felt surreal. I wasn't walking into Velocity Dynamics as an employee anymore, not as someone who could be ordered around, ignored, or erased. I was walking in as something they never imagined I could become. An owner. A board member. Their equal. Scratch that. Their superior. As the glass doors slid open, a wave of nervous glances rippled through the lobby. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Coffee cups hovered halfway to mouths. Junior developers stared, whispering behind monitors. Oh, they knew. Word spreads fast when your CEO has to sign away half the company's crown jewel just to keep the lights on. Rachel was waiting by the elevators. She gave me a look, half amusement, half relief. Never seen Graham that pale before, she smirked. Better get used to it, I replied. Might be his new natural color. The elevator doors opened. The executive floor. The air was thick with tension, the kind you could cut with a knife. I stepped into the boardroom like I owned it. Which technically, I did. At the far end of the table sat Graham. Still CEO. Still pretending he had control. But everything about him looked smaller. His tie was straightened this time. His hair combed. But the confidence, gone. Kathy, he greeted, forcing a strange smile. Welcome back. Thanks, I said, settling into the chair. My chair now. Opposite him. Though technically, I didn't come back. I upgraded. A few board members chuckled under their breath, quickly covering it with coughs. I laid the folder on the table, the same one from last night, now stamped, notarized, filed, and distributed to every shareholder. Per the agreement, I said, flipping it open, Pulse link is fully restored. System integrity confirmed. Client operations back online as of 6:42 a.m. Investor confidence stabilized. You're welcome. Graham nodded stiffly. Much appreciated. I tilted my head. Oh, but let's be clear. This isn't charity. This is oversight. I let the word hang, watching him flinch. I turned to the board. As of today, I am reinstated as Chief Technology Officer, with an additional seat on the board and 50% intellectual ownership of Pulse Link and all associated derivatives. One of the board members, an older man named Whitaker, cleared his throat. The documents are in order. It's official. Perfect, I smiled. Now let's talk about changes. I tapped my laptop. The big screen behind me flickered to life, showing a slide labeled Internal Threat Audit Report, PulseLink AI security logs. Graham's face blanched. He knew what was coming. 6 months ago, I began. PulseLink detected anomalies, unauthorized file accesses, midnight login attempts to clone sensitive architecture. The slide changed, timestamps, IP addresses, usernames. His usernames. A wave of murmurs spread through the boardroom. These aren't external attacks, I continued. These were internal. Directed at PulseLink's core repository. Specifically, by the CEO. Someone gasped. Another muttered, unbelievable. Graham jumped to his feet. This is out of context. I was reviewing. I held up a hand. Sit. My voice was calm, firm, absolute. He froze. Saturday. First time in 7 years he'd ever obeyed a command from me. For Section 8 of the shareholder agreement, I continued, any executive engaging in unauthorized IP tampering, sabotage, or behavior deemed a conflict of interest is subject to immediate disciplinary review. I clicked again. The next slide appeared. A simple headline, recommendation, removal of CEO Graham Foster. Dead silence. The board chair leaned forward. Kathy, you're formally recommending termination? Correction, I said. I'm demanding it. Graham's eyes darted around the room, desperate for support. But the room had shifted. The board wasn't looking at him anymore. They were looking at me. Whitaker sighed. Given the evidence and the situation, he glanced at the others. Heads nodded. It's not just Kathy's decision, another member, Elena, chimed in. He jeopardized our core product. Our investors. Our reputation. This isn't just reckless, it's grounds for dismissal. Graham slammed his hands on the table. You can't do this. I built this company. I met his gaze. No, Graham. I built it. You just signed the checks. The vote was unanimous. Effective immediately, Graham Foster is removed as CEO of Velocity Dynamics. Security was called. He stood trembling, furious, and for a moment, I thought he might lunge at me. But he didn't. He just glared, that same glare bullies give when they realize the kid they pushed too far finally hit back. This isn't over, he hissed as security led him out. I smiled. Oh, Graham, it absolutely is. I turned back to the board. Calm. Composed. But inside, oh, inside, I was electric. Let's begin, I said. There's a company to rebuild. Properly, this time. The news spread faster than wildfire. By noon, every desk in Velocity Dynamics knew, Graham's gone. Kathy's back. But not just back, she's running the place now. Did you see the security walk him out? Unreal. Even the junior developers, the same ones who used to avoid eye contact when Graham passed, were openly gossiping now, peeking over monitors, whispering in the hallways. I wasn't sure if it was respect, fear, or just disbelief. Maybe a mix of all three. But I didn't have time to care. There was work to do. Real work. The first order of business, damage control. The client losses from yesterday's outage were already piling up. Legal was in a frenzy, drafting apologies and revised contracts. Customer support lines were lit up like a Christmas tree. But as bad as that was, it was fixable. Clients weren't angry because PulseLink failed. They were angry because the people running it were incompetent. Now, that problem had a solution. By 2 p.m., I was in the war room. Glass walls. Whiteboards everywhere. Monitors tracking system recovery metrics. Status report, I said, looking at the engineering leads. One stood. Core systems are stable. APIs are back up. Database integrity confirmed. No data loss. Client portals 87% functional. The remaining are minor UI bugs, nothing critical. I nodded. Good. Push it to 100 by end of day. Then I turned to the operations manager. Legal notices? She sighed. 3 clients are threatening lawsuits. But after hearing Graham's gone, 2 already backed down. The 3rd is on the fence. Let me guess, I tapped my pen, Centurion Freight. She blinked. Yes. How did you? Because I built this company, I said, not even trying to hide the edge in my voice. I know every client better than Graham ever did. Just as we were finally stabilizing, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Blocked caller ID. I debated ignoring it, but something in my gut told me not to. Kathy speaking. A smooth voice answered. Male. Polished. Too polished. Miss Reyes, we should talk. Who is this? Call me Vincent. I represent interests. Interests? I echoed. You'll need to be more specific. A short pause. I'm authorized to discuss a potential acquisition. I frowned. Of what? Velocity Dynamics. Not for sale. Oh, no, the voice chuckled. Not the company. Pulse Link. My stomach tightened. Not interested. It's a generous offer. Our client is prepared to pay 9 figures. I stood, pacing toward the window. Tell your client that Pulse Link isn't for sale. Not today. Not ever. The voice remained calm. You might want to reconsider. This isn't a friendly request. There it was, the shift in tone. The threat underneath the velvet. Was that supposed to scare me? I asked, turning from the window. Because it's adorable. Another pause. Think it over, Miss Reyes. You'll be hearing from us again. Soon. Click. The line went dead. I stood there for a moment, processing. Then immediately opened my laptop. Logged into the Pulse Link security console. Ran an audit. Nothing. Clean. No breaches. No anomalies. Not yet, I muttered. But if someone wanted Pulse Link badly enough to offer 9 figures, and make threats when that failed, this wasn't just some random opportunist. This was organized. Strategic. Calculated. And if there's one thing I knew from building Pulse Link, threats that escalate don't stop. Rachel walks in. She paused, noticing my expression. Something's wrong. I nodded. Very. I summarized the call. Her face shifted from confusion, to concern, to something sharper. You think they're serious? She asked. I didn't answer immediately. Just stared at the Pulse Link dashboard. The system that had become both my greatest achievement, and now my biggest target. I think, I finally said, that we just stepped onto a much bigger playing field. And the rules just changed. My inbox chimed. A new email. No sender. No subject. Just one line in the body. Check your back door. Tick-tock. My blood ran cold. I immediately pulled up the PulseLink server logs. Scrolled. Scanned. And there it was, a ping. External. Tiny. Almost undetectable. But there. Someone had found it. The back door I built. The same one that brought Graham to his knees. Someone was knocking. The moment I saw that ping, the unauthorized access attempt, my hands went cold. Check your back door. Tick-tock. It wasn't subtle. It was a message. A warning. A countdown. I slammed my laptop shut, stood, and locked the conference room door. Rachel blinked. Kathy? What is it? Someone found it, I said, my voice flat. The fail-safe. The one I used against Graham. Her face drained of color. Can they use it against us? I shook my head. Not yet. Not unless they have the right credentials. But if they're knocking, they're already closer than they should be. Who? She asked. Who has the resources to even find it? I stared at the Pulse Link dashboard. All systems were stable. For now. But it felt like looking at a calm ocean, knowing there was a tsunami just over the horizon. Someone bigger than a corporate rival, I said. This isn't just business. This is organized. Strategic. Professional. Rachel crossed her arms, her eyes narrowing. They want Pulse Link. No, I corrected. They want control of Pulse Link. Of me. Of the data. Of everything. I pulled open the emergency operations terminal, something only I had access to. A hidden layer beneath Pulse Link's main infrastructure. Typed in a string of commands. Initiate full system lockdown protocol. Confirm Y/N. My fingers hovered. Locking it would prevent anyone, even legitimate users, from touching core systems. But it would also stall the company temporarily. Kathy, Rachel said, watching me. If you do this, it's going to hurt. Bad. I nodded. Yeah. But not as bad as letting them in. I hit Y. Lockdown initiated. Pulse Link's core dimmed. Not down. But sealed. Fortified. Nothing in. Nothing out. Like slamming every vault door shut at once. My phone buzzed. Another blocked call. I declined it. Then another. And another. An email appeared seconds later. No subject. Just one sentence. Wrong move. Now we escalate. The Pulse Link firewall lit up like fireworks. Port scans. Injection attempts. DDoS floods. Credential stuffing. They were throwing everything at us. And this wasn't a random hacker in a basement. This was methodical. Industrial-grade cyber warfare. Jesus, Rachel muttered, watching the attack map flare up with incoming threats from half a dozen countries. This is bad, she said. Really bad. It's not bad, I replied, typing rapidly. It's an opportunity. She frowned. An opportunity? Yeah, I said. They've shown their hand. Now we trace it. I spun up Pulse Link's deep trace protocols. The same AI-driven analysis that had caught Graham's midnight intrusions. But this time I wasn't tracking a clumsy CEO. This time it was professionals. And that made them predictable. The AI flagged a pattern. Repeated routing through a specific server cluster in Zurich. Followed by a bounce to Singapore. Then to Buenos Aires. But Zurich was the weak link. A private cloud server leased by a shell corporation. A shell corporation registered to Vanguard Strategic Holdings. I blinked. No way. Rachel leaned over. Who's that? I turned to her. A private equity firm. A massive one. They've been quietly buying up cybersecurity companies for years. Trying to consolidate the market. So they wanted Pulse Link, she asked. I shook my head. No. They wanted me out. So they could own it. Control it. License it globally. At their terms, not ours. I kept digging. The AI flagged a document. Poorly scrubbed metadata. An internal memo. Objective: acquire Pulse link by any means. Phase 1, remove creator. Phase 2, force acquisition under distressed conditions. Holy, Rachel whispered. They backed Graham, I said, realizing it as the pieces clicked into place. He wasn't just greedy. He was leveraged. A new notification popped. Trace complete. Identity confirmed, Vincent Carter. Director of Cyber Assets, Vanguard Strategic Holdings. There you are, I whispered. I opened a secure channel. Not through Pulse Link, but through a secondary protocol I had built years ago. A dead man's switch. Loaded the compiled logs. The attack traces. The memo. The financial records. Sent it to 3 places simultaneously. 1. The FBI's Cyber Crime Division. 2. 3. The SEC. 4. 5. TechCrunch, Wired, and Forbes. 6. Let's see how they like being exposed, I muttered. The moment the package went out, the attack slowed. Then stopped. Dead. A minute later, my phone rang. This time, not a blocked number. It was Vincent. I answered. Kathy Reyes speaking. A pause. Then his voice, cold, measured. But strained. That was unnecessary. No, Vincent. What was unnecessary was thinking you could strong-arm me or Pulse Link. This isn't over. Oh, I think it is, I said, smiling. Check the news in 5 minutes. And maybe check with your legal team. Goodbye, Vincent. I hung up. By sundown, the headlines were everywhere. Massive cyber takeover attempt foiled. Pulse Link creator exposes private equity sabotage. SEC launches investigation into Vanguard Holdings. FBI Cyber Crime Division confirms data theft, extortion attempts. Velocity Dynamics stock didn't crash. In fact, it surged. Investors realized the problem wasn't Pulse Link. It was the parasites trying to own it. As for me, my name wasn't just on the Pulse Link patents now, it was everywhere. The architect. The savior. The one who didn't just build the system but defended it against everything. Technology is only as secure as the person who builds it. Ownership matters. Boundaries matter. Knowing your worth matters. They tried to erase me. Tried to take what I built. Instead, they taught me just how unstoppable I really am.